This is the first of the Conservation Supervisor training videos. I'm Bob Buchanan. I am Chairman and a Supervisor with the Little Kanawha Conservation District. It is important for us to receive training, not just initially but ongoing. Training is an important aspect. It has been mentioned many times, and I, after several years of being a supervisor, quite agree that it generally takes a supervisor about 2 years to become an effective, functioning member of that conservation district. There's so much to learn, so many things to know. I myself was an accountant, financial consultant with a farm on the side. I was appointed for the first term, but now we are elected, and elected by the people of West Virginia, your county. So we're going to start with conservation law and the districts. Now, we're not attempting to make you an attorney, but it is vitally important that all of us have an understanding of, number one, where we come from, how we got here, and what we can and cannot do. So if you're looking back to it, in 1937, during the 1930 Dust Bowls, the Roosevelt administration determined that there was something that needed to be done because of all of the devastation that had been created. In 1937, the Federal Standards District Act created conservation districts. It was an act that was sent to the governors of the various states, encouraging them to have their legislature create conservation districts. At that point also was the formation, or a little before that, the formation of the Soil Conservation Service. And the initial individual was also the father of conservation, soil conservation, Hugh Hammett Bennett. In 1939, they passed it to the West Virginia Senate to create the State Soil Conservation Committee. It's not essential that we know what all those dates were, but that was the beginning. And so all of the districts were formed after that. The very first district in the state of West Virginia was the West Fork District, which is housed over in Clarksburg area. After that, there have been several. We have 14 conservation districts. Now, I'm going to tell you that it is important not that you know every aspect of the law, but that you know the law. You know what you can and cannot do, and to do that, you have to become familiar with Chapter 1921A, which is known as conservation law. And during that time period, whenever it was passed, the legislature said, and this is the reading, "It is hereby declared to be the policy of the legislature to provide for conservation in soil and soil resources of this state for the control, prevention of soil erosion, for the prevention of floodwater and sediment damage, and for furthering the conservation, development, utilization, and disposal of water, and thereby to preserve natural resources, control floods, prevent impairment of dams and reservoirs, assist in maintaining and navigability of rivers, harbors, preserve wildlife, protect the tax base, protect public lands, and protect and promote the health, safety, and welfare of the people of this state." That is the beginning. And as you look through Chapter 1921A, it lists the definitions of who everyone is. One of the things about becoming a conservation supervisor is there are so many acronyms, so many abbreviations, and it takes quite a time to really become familiar with it. So if you get a copy of that, you can look through the definitions to understand who everybody is. What is the State Conservation Committee's responsibilities? Who are they? How are they made up? And then how does that play in with the West Virginia Conservation Agency? It has been, I've heard many times, and it's been said by some supervisors, that the Conservation Agency was their boss. Well, that is not true. The state has created the legislature of West Virginia that we are elected by the people of your county. And so basically, your boss are the citizens in the county of which you are elected. And so you have a responsibility to represent them. Now, the Conservation Agency was created by being the administrative end of the State Conservation Committee. And by that, they work with the state 14 conservation districts. And there are several ways that they work with us. They offer appropriate assistance to the district supervisors. They keep supervisors informed of activities, facilitate an interchange of ideas, and promote cooperation, coordinate programs offered by the district through advice and consultation, approve the district's hiring of personnel, approve annual agriculture enhancement best practices and program guidance, review and approve district research projects, set supervisors' expense and per diem rates based on availability of funds, respond to gubernatorial declared natural disasters, administer a conservation grant, evaluate district supervisors' application for cost share programs, and consider petitions to dissolving a conservation district. Now, it does not mean that they are a partner with us. We are directly related to all of these partners in how we provide conservation. Does conservation just mean agriculture? No. There are so many things. Now we should be expanding and looking into master gardeners. All of the aspects that conservation entails in the state of West Virginia. We have 170 dams. All but one of the conservation districts have dams under their responsibility. And that's a very important task. But for you to find out what exactly you can and cannot do relative to that is in Chapter 19. Now, you need to always be aware that when you talk about legal authority, the U.S. Constitution is primary. And then come federal statutes and acts, federal rules, federal grant agreement terms. Then comes down to our West Virginia Constitution. And then West Virginia statutes, the West Virginia Code of State Rules, and agency policies and district policies. It is important for us to know what we can and cannot do. And to do that, we need to always look to the code to provide that. West Virginia conservation districts have roles and responsibilities granted to them under 1921A, and these include assist landowners, occupiers in carrying out operations on their land, receive expense and a per diem in the performance of their duties based on availability of funds, develop comprehensive plans relating to the soil erosion, flood prevention, conduct demonstration projects, surveys, investigations into soil erosion and flooding, make available equipment, fertilizers, seeds, and seedlings, enact preventative and control measures and works of improvement, acquire property, including the right to institute condemnation proceedings to acquire the property, to sue and be sued in the name of the district, to construct, improve, operate, or maintain structures to fulfill the state's conservation law, enter into contracts, accept donations, grants, gifts, and contributions to carry out district operations, cooperate with other districts and other governmental agencies. You know, it's a big job to be a conservation supervisor. That does not mean that you come into the meeting and all you do is sit there. You have to be involved. If you're not going to be involved with what the district is doing, then it's probably not for you, because it is a big job to undertake the job of conservation supervisor. But the law has some direct responsibilities of what we do. And we're going to talk about some of those. But I can just encourage everyone. Now, I carry with me constantly a copy of chapter 1921A because I want to know if a question comes up, what can I do? What can we do in the district? Then I can relate to that and I can be able to determine that. That's not the only thing that I carry any longer. There are others. Chapter 6, at one point, there have been some changes to the law after it has been written. After the code was written in the 1930s, it has not been updated very many times, but there have been some additions to it, and those are important aspects. Those are things that you need to be aware of. But there are now provisions set in the West Virginia Code that if there's a supervisor who is not performing his duties, that individual can only be eliminated as a conservation supervisor by following Chapter 6 of the West Virginia State Code. It is essential that we know what that is. I also carry Chapter 22. The various chapters that get into, and as you'll find as being a supervisor, when you look at all these dams, there are various things, responsibilities that we have. The emergency action plans, how does that play? Who is governing that? All of these things come into play with becoming a conservation supervisor. And it is our responsibility to know what we can and cannot do. And you can't just come and sit in a meeting and expect that you're going to be a viable conservation supervisor. The code is there to assist us. Am I telling you that you have to be a student of the West Virginia Code? No. But to have a copy, to know what it says, so that if the question comes up, what can and can't you do? The West Virginia Code is the bottom line. In our next segment, we'll deal with fiduciaries. Look forward to seeing you then.